Good day and welcome to the Cory Morgan Show as we're halfway through October in this really crazy year. Well, maybe every year is kind of crazy, but it just feels like it gets nuttier and nuttier all the time. Stuff going on all around the world, stuff going on domestically, and stuff going on here in Alberta. So I'll be covering a whole bunch of that stuff today, as well as talking to a very interesting guest in about 15 minutes, Magatte Wade of Prosperity Not Poverty. She took part in a documentary that John Robson put together. If you're familiar with him, you should look him up. He has a lot of great work in Canada on political stuff. And the documentary is called In the Dark, Senegal as a Case Study in Energy Poverty. Talks about, how the Western world and its idiotic environmentalism is really, really hurting developing countries a lot. And getting a firsthand account from that should be quite interesting. So that'll be on in a little bit. Normally, I would have Dave give me a news check-in, but he's tied up with a meeting. I suspect he'd rather be in here than sitting at that meeting, but all the same, means you just get more of me going through those news things and seeing what's happening this week. Use that comment scroll. I see a couple of you there. Free Speech Media, Rhonda. It is an interactive show to a degree. I see every comment there. I don't necessarily call them all out, but we can have those chats and just keep things civil with each other. So let's see. And yes, we will talk about, I see people are talking already about education, and that's what I want to start with here with this teachers' strike in Alberta. I mean, eventually that strike's going to be settled and there's going to be concessions made. But one concession that must not be on the table is the reduction or elimination of school choice. In fact, the UCP government should be working on expanding education options to reduce the Alberta Teacher Union's ability to hold students hostages as they are right now. Alberta's teachers turned down an offer which would have made them among the highest compensated teachers in Canada, along with a commitment to hire 3,000 more teachers and 1,500 educational assistants. Since then, though, we see the true target of the teachers' union has emerged: school choice. While union representatives have been uttering the stock lines about class sizes and complexity, their prime target's been complaining about private and charter schools. And this is where the true nature of the strike emerges. It's a power grab by a union that wants a monopoly on education provision. The union couldn't care less about the needs of the children, and it shows. They pretend to care about class sizes, yet to forget to acknowledge that alternative education options currently take about 75,000 Alberta students out of public school classrooms when you take homeschooling into consideration. So if those options are taken away, as the union would like, how do we accommodate with that sudden influx of students? Aren't the classes already overcrowded? Not only that, how are we going to pay for it? Despite the claims of the teachers' union, kids in private schools and who are homeschooled save the taxpayers a load of money. Children in private schools only receive 70% of the funding per student that a public school student gets. And homeschool children get about 10% of that funding. Students in charter schools cost about the same. So if these options are taken away from parents and students, the public system will have to make up that shortfall, which is going to be a lower per student ratio of funding overall. The union constantly brings up the challenges of what they like calling classroom complexity. There's truth to this claim, but the proposed solution is wrong. So we've had a decade of mass immigration policies. The number of students speaking English as a second language has increased dramatically. That's really causing a lot of difficulty in the classrooms for teachers. Fair enough. As well, educational trends have increasingly put children with special needs or different needs into regular classrooms. It does make for more challenging learning environment for everybody, from fellow students to the teachers. But charter and separate schools provide specialized environments where students can receive the instruction then tailored to those needs. It actually takes the complexity out of the classroom and addresses those. We got charter schools for English as a second language. We got charter schools for gifted children or children who need extra help in other areas. Yet the union wants to keep the children crammed into standardized classrooms. They're talking out of both sides of their mouths. Teachers recognize the unique needs of children in learning environments and how not all of them respond well to conventional learning methods. That's why the teachers' unions always claim they oppose standardized testing, because the kids learn differently. The reality is they just don't want to see which teachers are good and which are bad. They got to keep that merit pay idea out of the formula. Again, they don't care about the students. It's a union. Remember that. They don't even like calling themselves a union. They call themselves an association, but they're a union. Don't let them talk around it. When efforts are made to provide specialized charter or private schools, the unions fight the efforts tooth and nail. The hypocrisy is galling. Increased school choice offers more educational spaces that can accommodate the diverse educational needs and it saves the entire system money. Those spaces don't create union positions, however, and that's where the unions have a problem with it. Not only should the Smith government stand firm against the teachers' strike on these demands, but it should make it clear it's time to develop even more choice in education. We've got underutilized inner city schools that should be identified and converted into charter schools. The creation of more private schools should be encouraged, and parents should be reminded their children won't lose educational time due to strikes in those institutions. The government has to hold its ground against organized labor because they're trying to take full control of the educational system, and it's time to start fighting back. With choice for both teachers and students being on the table, everybody wins. Oh, except for the self-serving unions. Let's see, some of the comments going here, guys. Yeah, good afternoon to Debbie. And okay, here's one. Paul saying public funds should not go into private schools. The politics of envy. Listen, we all pay taxes. Those taxes go per student, and it gets spent somewhere. Only 70% of it goes to the student who goes to a private school. So what? Get over it. Suck up your envy. You're actually saving money by the students going there. Where do we stop that? It sounds like the fools who say that we shouldn't allow any private provision of health care too, right? Everybody should just have a miserable, low level of care under a socialized system. Works great in Cuba, doesn't it? The idiotic union lines. Idiotic union lines. That's all it is. Guys, we pay taxes. We have children. We should have the right to choose where our children go to school. And yes, some of it's going to go private. And you know what? Because it makes it better. Get over it. But yes, let's see. The union tips its hand. Let's see. I stand with workers who never allow union reps to choose strike action, from Glenn Erickson. Okay, but the bottom line is, in the end, the workers are responsible for the actions of their union. They kind of bat that back and forth. Well, the workers are all right, but it's the union that's bad. Well, they vote for their union reps. They vote for those deals, and the teachers have to be held accountable. I mean, some of what shows what's going on here, and as we're seeing, and legacy media, of course, is giving it a lot of ink. An application's been put forward for a petition now to hold a referendum to basically ban all funding of alternative education. And lo and behold, the person behind this petition and such is Alicia Taylor, who is a union representative, also a teacher. Why? Why does that bother them so much? It's all about monopolies. It's all about stuffing everybody together into a room. They're feeling the pressure. They're feeling the threat because charter schools are expanding. And we're not talking about the private schools, even charter schools, nonprofit schools, but it's giving options, non-union options. I want to stand up for the students. So we got to have that discussion. And as we're seeing that pressure on, because parents are getting pretty upset, they're having difficulties. The students, of course, are sweating, particularly ones when you're looking at a grade 12 year, because they want to make sure they can graduate, apply for post-secondary, things such as that. And here's one from Scott Anderson, a good one to put out. Pardon my voice. I am shaking off a bit of a flu here, guys. If federal issues like immigration and inflation are hammering Alberta's classrooms, why isn't the ATA demanding federal solutions through its counterpart, the Canadian Teachers Federation? Excellent question. You know, this is what it comes down to, too, when we see the strike actions and the threats and the usual crap. Mass immigration is causing us problems everywhere, not immigration in itself. And that's where a line has to be distinguished. I mean, immigration is an integral part of our country, and it's good for us when done correctly, when controlled. But we're paying the price, the consequences of over a decade of mass immigration under Trudeau, and it's hitting everywhere. That's where healthcare is running into shortages. That's where housing was running into shortages. And of course, when you bring in uncontrolled amounts of people into the classroom, it causes pressures and shortages. So let's address that. Let's talk about it. We can't just keep spending our way out of it. We don't have the money anymore. Alberta's going into a deficit. Again, I think Smith should be cutting some spending in a lot of areas, but that also means not increasing in others. It means not giving the teachers, the last I'd heard on their return offer, after they turned down a massive raise offer, they want $2 billion on top of that. They almost want double what was offered in the last offer. In other words, the teachers union is completely beyond reason. So something's got to give somewhere. And I say competition. You know, let's get it out there. Let's let parents choose. Let's let the funding follow the student. This much per student goes wherever the children get put. Nice, true equality. Let's look at some of this other idiocy. Cocaine trafficking sentence cut in half for a Jamaican facing deportation from Canada. Yeah, this is another one. Much like the other gentleman you might have heard of a little while ago, who had his sentence reduced. He wanted to molest a 14-year-old girl. And again, the judge in both cases said, well, if we give you the full sentence, then we'd have to deport you. And we want to keep your citizenship status, so or your application towards it. So we'll reduce the sentence. This is insane. How many times are we going to hear this story? Right? Again, we're dealing with mass immigration. We're dealing with having too many people here. Can we at least not just start with the criminals and get rid of them? Is it really that hard? We don't need the drug dealers and the child molesters. Yet here we are. And yeah, he says he experienced systemic and personal discrimination, of course, and that played a role in his criminality, is what the judge said. I don't care. I could not care less. That's still his problem. A lot of people endure those sorts of things. It doesn't mean that they turn to crime. And we can't keep making excuses for that. Let's study those things we want to prevent. We want to make things better. But once it's done, it's done. Let's see. Here's a strange case coming out of Alberta. And these are stories, as I said, normally Dave will come in for the news check-in. Unavailable today, but this one's an odd one. And these are all in the Western Standard online, just so you know. WesternStandard.news. So there's a fella up in northern Alberta actually won a lottery and $1 million in a scratch and win ticket. And I haven't seen follow-up on this. So about 4 or 5 days ago, he's 25 years old. Joshua Francis Salto. Maybe check out the WesternStandard.news and look at the picture of this guy, because he's gone missing. He won $1 million. He bought an RV, parked outside of a relative's home, and disappeared. They found blood apparently in the RV, and no sign of him, just an empty vehicle. It's really, really unusual and quite concerning. Of course, I hope he's all right, but you know, somebody suddenly got $1 million in their pocket and they disappear. It's might not necessarily be a good thing. Another odd story: the Kelowna airport system got hacked to play Hamas messages over the screens and chants in Arabic over its audio system. This is an odd one. You know, again, I don't even know where to start with the pro-Hamas movement and some of their things and what they consider victories or not victories. I guess it would be pretty terrifying to be in an airport and see that somebody could actually get into that system. I imagine it's not a critical system for other more important parts of your flight and travel. But yeah, I guess I could certainly unnerve a whole heck of a lot of people. Either way, guys, all of that stuff is in much more detail at westernstandard.news. Be sure to check it out if you haven't subscribed yet. It's $9.99 a month. $100 a year, and you get full access past that paywall to all of those stories. If you've subscribed already, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And if you haven't, come on, get on there. That's what keeps us independent. That's how we keep those reporters out there putting those stories up on there. All right, let's get on to my guest. I've been looking forward to this. This is Magatte Wade of Prosperity, Not Poverty, and it's a discussion that really needs to be had. And it was part of a documentary by John Robson, as I said earlier at the start of the show, In the Dark, Senegal as a Case Study in Energy Poverty. We really, there's a real Western hypocrisy when it comes to environmental controls and looking actually at the damages it's causing in other areas. So I'm looking forward to having the discussion on some of this and what's come up in that documentary. So thank you very much for joining us today, and welcome to the Western Standard Studio.
Thank you so much, Cory. Thanks for having me. Pleasure being here.
Yeah, so maybe you kind of start with Prosperity, Not Poverty. What's your organization about?
Yeah, so Prosperity, Not Poverty is its biggest mission is tackle the energy poverty issue. And the relationship between energy and prosperity is, I don't know if most people have seen the graph, but there is a very compelling graph that basically shows you that there is no such thing as a poor energy, as an energy poor nation that happens to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
There is none.
Mm.
So energy, access to affordable, reliable, abundant energy is a prerequisite for prosperity building.
Absolutely. And I mean, in areas with climate extremes, in a sense, I mean, in Canada, we have to stay warm. We can't get anything done. I noticed you talking on the documentary about in a hot country, if you don't have air conditioning and those sorts of things, how do you get a good learning environment? How do you get a business environment? How do you do all of those things? But cheap, affordable energy isn't always necessarily the greenest energy. I
No,
think that's where
no,
the issue
yeah,
comes,
yeah.
right?
That is exactly where the issue comes. So a few years ago, we had some people, I call them the anti-fossil fuel zealots, the climate alarmists. So a subgroup of people have come up with this concept and idea that Earth was in danger of basically imploding within the next few decades. That was back in the times of Al Gore. You know, up till recently, some people think we only have 12 years left. I think AOC of the US thinks we have 10 years left. So even without going into is Earth gonna implode or not, which I don't believe it will, but without even going into that argument, at the end of the day, those individuals have come up with the idea to that perceived threat, is to come to a net zero. And the best way to do net zero is obviously it would mean we would have to cut fossil fuels dry right now, across the board. And so it is interesting that these ideas come from the West. They came with these ideas, but first of all, they're not applying it to themselves, and thank God, because people are fighting these ideas here. But they're still using fossil fuels. Okay, but the only people who have to respect these mandates are not the Chinese, not the Indians, because China and India have enough economic, independence to say no. No, we're not gonna go for this. You do it if you want, but we're gonna continue using fossil fuels to continue, fueling our growth. The Indians pretty much are saying the same thing. But who is out there and does have no choice but to supposedly listen to this? It's the Africans. This is the continent that has the youngest population in the world. Average age is 19. By 2050, 1/4 of the world's population will be African. By 2100, it's going to be half of the world's population will be African. And you are asking people right now in Africa to basically give up on the use of fossil fuels, which is the only way for them to build prosperity. And so that's the hypocrisy you were talking about.
Mhm.
And because we are poor, we depend on the West primarily to finance many, almost pretty much anything we need to get built, like infrastructure, especially. And then the West has come to the point of saying, no, we're not going to finance any infrastructure that basically is based on fossil fuels. And what I find funny there, Cory, is I'll give you an example. My country, Senegal, we have recently found oil and gas. So while Germany says, it's the Green Party of Germany that has made sure that German today, is suffering energy wise. But when the reality hits and you have these cold winters and you really need gas and energy, then they have no choice but to fire back the coal plants,
Yeah.
and the Green parties even agreed with that. And the Chancellor of Germany, back in the day with Scholz, came down to my country a few years ago to basically buy gas. The gas that they're telling us
Yeah.
not to use, but they're commanding us not to use. So the hypocrisy knows no end.
And then there's more to the environment, of course, than just emissions. So, I mean, some people, if they haven't traveled to developing countries, might not realize.
Mhm.
But having a spotless, clean country, and keeping the rivers clean and things like that—that's a luxury
Yeah.
that is great to have. But I mean, you have to address your more immediate concerns, such as energy and so on, to bring yourself to that prosperous level to take care of the environment. They're sort of trying to leapfrog and say, oh, well, you can jump ahead to solar panels and wind energy and then not worry about the other development that needs to come along with it. So
Mhm.
it extension could cause more environmental damage than what it's saving.
And that's the other point that we're making. And also, if you want to stay at the environmental level, we say that your stubbornness in terms of not wanting to do fossil fuels, it's just being out of touch with reality. I'll give you an example. In many African nations, most of them energy poor, what it means directly is women having to cook with various forms of biomass. So we're talking charcoal, we're talking wood, we're talking cow dung, things like that.
Mm.
Terrible, terrible pollutants, right? But that's what they cook with because they don't have access to gas, which is much cleaner, and safer for everybody, for themselves, their health, and also for the environment because it's less polluting than those other biomasses we talked about.
Mm.
But because the West and the anti-fossil fuel zealots are insisting on if it cannot be fossil fuels, well, it's not because you say it cannot be fossil fuels, but these women are just going to wait there and wait for your solar stoves that don't work. they're still going to go for something. So if you keep telling them your choice is only solar stoves, then your solar stove is going to end up in their, like in the courtyard, maybe growing basil or growing mint, while they go to what really works for them, which is coal, charcoal, and things like charcoal and biomass of sorts. So this is a reality of what's happening. So what you're forcing onto them is only causing more pollution to happen, and nobody wins in this thing. Humans are not winning, and the environment is not winning. So
Yeah. So is there? Um, I guess it's difficult for governments. I mean, when they're kind of dependent and hoping for aid from other countries, you don't want to sound ungrateful and say, "Well, we don't want this coming in. We really need the help." But at the same time, can the leaders put in some pragmatic requests? Are their voices being heard at all?
voices are being heard. I mean, right now, what is good is we're hearing some African leaders pushing back on this rhetoric and saying we're going to use our fossil fuels no matter what. Up till now, it's been an uphill battle because they can say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, if you don't have a means to finance your own infrastructure needs, you're at the mercy of those who provide those resources and financing. And traditionally, it's been the West, and the West has decided, especially for ESG, that they do not want to finance fossil fuel related infrastructure. So what is going on today, though, is some of our luck right now is when you have on the other side of this, on the other side from the African nations, and I speak of Africa right now, is right now in the US, we have somebody like Chris Wright, who is our Secretary of Energy in the US, and he's 100% on board with we should not dictate to developing nations, to any nation, what their energy mix should be. And nothing wrong with fossil fuels. People should make their decisions, and we need to support them in what they decide to do. Otherwise, you're talking about a new form of colonialism, which is, climate colonialism. That's really what we're going through right now. So things are starting to happen and to turn around, but then I'm worried about what happens if and when, because at some point, Chris is going to have to move on. Nobody is there forever, and then if it's somebody who is not in line with this, then we go back to square one in terms of. So in the meantime, that's why these conversations are so important. That's why I do what I do here. I'm fighting this on both sides of the aisles, in the Western world, reminding them of what poverty energy is all about, and that it is a great moral imperative to work on it and make sure that, at least in this case, Africans have access to fossil fuels at all cost. And also, when going back home, making the case to our people there about the need for these things. And there, the issue, what we have to fight is all of these NGOs, all of this aid money, also financing all of these climate action organizations. So basically, putting a lot of money into the hands of young Africans who start a little nonprofit and this little, awareness building campaign building. Awareness building campaigns, and that's the biggest pushback we have on that side. So the climate action money financing organizations along those lines, who are then in Africa saying fossil fuels is bad for us, it's bad for our country, it's bad for our communities. We need to embrace renewables, we need to embrace wind, but not really understanding how detrimental that type of rhetoric is. So here we're trying to we're trying to bring awareness on both sides, but on the ground, the biggest problem we have is not only you don't have enough voices speaking of the need for fossil fuels, but you also have a barrage of various types of organization, nonprofits, well funded by climate action supporters of the West. Well, so you're like squeezed.
Yeah, unfortunately, the climate action is a sub-industry unto itself. People are getting very well off.
Exactly.
And I think you see some who maybe they even believe what they're saying. They like to fly out and hold their banner. Look at the solar panels we made, but
that's right.
They don't show the camera on the village over there where they have no electricity.
Exactly. Or people at night, like the movie shows, like we were in this one little village where literally as soon as the sun goes down, everybody knows that now they have to be inside the rooms and locked with their doors locked, and they even have what we call pot chambers. English is my fourth language, but can you imagine 2025 you have pot chambers? And why? Because once it gets dark, no one dares to go out because there are scorpions, snakes, all types of things roaming in the dark because those things love the dark. So just imagine that. So, and I would argue that I really believe that this is why we did this movie, because this other side of this issue needs to be shown to people. I think very few people think about it. And even if they were left to their own devices to imagine, they could not even begin to imagine what we're talking about. And we can't blame them, because when you're living in Canada, surrounded by what we're surrounded here, or the US, even the concept of power outage that lasts more than a few hours, it's foreign to most people, let alone that happening every single day. Water that has no pressure, that is for those of us who have running water. You mean you're in a village where you live with the sun? At night you have to bunker yourself inside a room. We cannot possibly begin to imagine all of these things, let alone think about it. So that's why this type of movie is very important, because I think it just wakes many more people up to what else is going on out there. And as we put this type of information out, it also helps with these climate action funded NGOs on the ground who are speaking against what we're speaking about. So at some point, the best disinfectant is sunlight. A movie like that is designed to just put it out there for people to see.
No, it's a great documentary. And I mean, if people would realize too, it's progression. I mean, it may start with combustion vehicles and a coal generating plant. I mean, that's where we started out here too. And then as the economy develops, you can move along and you can expand into more reduced emissions items. But right now, I mean, the goal is just to make sure you have efficient farming, have
That's
heat
right.
in the houses, light on the
That's
streets.
right. That's right. That's right.
So how has the reception been to the documentary so far?
I mean, so far, I think it's really been really great. We've also heard news of young people who are in the audience who looked at it and were just like, "This, I think, is going to resonate with my generation." So that's very encouraging to hear. And at the end of the day, the reason why I have hope in this documentary is because we did what I think is the best thing to do when there is a big argument that people are confused. At some point, let us remove the intellectual arguments and let us go back to human stories and see what we're talking about really means for everyday people half away across the world from you. Let us see if we can take you on a journey with us so you can walk a mile in our shoes and in the shoes of the people there, and show, don't tell. And then people will walk away making up their own mind. So we had people saying they did not know, and it was very helpful for them to see.
Oh, it's just good. I mean, we have it easy out here, and it's a competitive streaming world too, to get the eyes and ears of people. When you got a million other things coming up, do you want to see? But I mean, as you said, this is a huge part of the earth that really we don't talk about nearly enough.
No.
A large part of our
No,
population
no.
that
No, but it's Cory. That's what I was saying. I was doing a podcast this morning with another party, and I told him. I said the problem with energy is that it is not visible to most of us. In this room, if I say where's energy here, most people will think about this heater that we're hearing right now. Heating us and making sure we're not as cold, because it's freezing cold outside right now.
yeah, it's cool.
But if you ask people here, where's energy, they will point to you, oh, that heater that's working. That's it. Nobody's going to think about this microphone, but how energy was involved in bringing this about. No one is going to think about this tablecloth. No one is going to think about our clothes. No one is going to think about the food that we're eating, because fertilizer and all of that stuff. No one is thinking about these cameras, how they came about, the screen of a camera, all of that. For any of the things that surrounds us, including the things we ate and the glasses you have on your nose, energy had to be part of it. Otherwise, none of it. We're back in caves. And I think this is the crux of a problem. People just don't see it, but it's everywhere.
Okay.
And that's the problem.
And the affordability of it. I mean,
Yes.
it was created.
Yes.
Certainly, you could reduce the energy generation and still create some
If
things,
it
but
was
then the
too-
price of everything
Yeah.
goes out of reach.
If it was too expensive, we would not have any of this stuff here. Maybe you know that you can have a pair of glasses, but maybe not the shoes you have. When things are super expensive and not abundant, then the production follows. It's not going to be abundant, and not affordable for everybody. So, and that's, I think, the issue we have with energy. And I wish, and one day I will do it. Somebody who is so anti-fossil fuels, I'll have standing in front of me and say, give me your glasses, give me your jacket, give me your shirt, give me your pants, give me your underwear, give me your shoes, give me your socks. You'll be naked.
Mm.
And then I'll say, oh, and by the way, go stand over there,
Yeah.
outside. And let's see how long you last.
No, they take a lot for granted. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're before I let you go, you're touring and promoting this. Have you got more events coming up?
Yes, tonight we're speaking at the University of Calgary, and a few talks I think we're going to do there, and then we're going to be going to some other universities in the U.S. as well as back in Canada at some point. British Columbia, I think we're doing one there. So for me, it's about seeing if we can share a different side of a story. With people who I know truly care. I do know that young people do care. Many people like to be upset with young people because they're so misguided. At the end of the day, they care, and that's the energy that we need. And then from there, let us just share a story with them. It shouldn't be about trying to convince them of anything, but it should just be about putting a different side of the story in front of them. They can compare it with other stories we may have heard, and also see how it lands with them, and then let them do the work themselves. They're grown-ups; they'll know what to do. So that's what we're going to do.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, and where can people find the documentary and information about your work in general?
Yeah, prosperity, not poverty. .org or prosperity not poverty.org.
Okay.
There, people can see basically the principles behind the work that we're doing. I like to personally lead with just sharing with people the human toll of all of this, a real life example. My own example is an example of what poverty energy means. And so, but behind that, we definitely do have all types of data, all types of reports, all types of articles, writings for people who are like, wow, this is different. I want to dig into this. Where's the evidence and all of that? So we have that as well in there. So people can watch it there and just have a download on the information about us. Poverty, not prosperity.org.
Great. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for coming in to talk to us today about it and for the work you're doing. I really hope it has every success and you can help people just kind of wake up. I don't think they mean bad. They just sometimes take things for granted.
Yes. Thank you for having me. And exactly that. I think we have to remember that all of us are busy. Each one of us, there's something we focus on. And energy, again, is not an easy one to grasp because it is so hidden in everything. It's so part of everything, but it's hidden. So I think we have to have compassion and patience for people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Great. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. So yes, again, check that out. Prosperity, not poverty. If you Google that up, I'm certain you'll find it. And just such an important discussion on something we all forget about. I mean, you want to know when you remember energy is when you don't have it. That's when you realize how important it is. As Magatte pointed out, if the power fails for just an hour or two, you suddenly get a heck of a wake-up call going on. And it does become a bit enraging, when you look at developing countries where they have a much tougher time. They're just trying to get things rolling up to the level of development we got to enjoy decades ago. And you get these NGOs and these green hypocrites coming out saying, well, you can't dam that river, or you can't have that coal-fired plant. But here, have some solar panels, have a windmill. They've got more immediate needs. And we have to understand, with more energy, you can have so much more other things that help with the environment. One of the issues in developing countries, people talk about it, she's talking about how fast the population is growing in Africa and in developing nations in general. One of the luxuries that wealthy countries can only afford is having small families if they choose to. That's a separate discussion, but that's the truth of it. When you're in a developing country, when there's unfortunately a high child mortality, when there's no such thing as a pension plan or things to assure yourself of some sort of retirement, typically what happens is you have large families, so that you have children to be able to take care of you when you're older and children who survive into adulthood. When the countries become developed, become wealthy and so on, then people can think of things such as family planning. And I'm not getting into the discussion about, the morality of birth control and such, but that's the way things work, because overpopulation is something in areas that causes environmental pressures. If you can afford through affordable energy, to slow the population growth, you do the environment more good as well, and people in general. So, I mean, check that out. It was good to get that voice on there to talk about these things and getting, realistically about it. Let's just see some of these comments. As 4 big banks are funding the Century Initiative, a pro-immigration advocacy group, from James. Okay. Immigration will strengthen your country, but not their own countries. It's a difficult thing to discuss. Peter Fontaine saying, Magatte, maybe talk about healthcare, access to clean water, education, irrigation systems, all available affordably with fossil fuels plus economic revenue generation. And yeah, I believe that's sort of what she was getting at, right? All of those things, which are so important. And if you don't have affordable energy, you can't really have any of those things. How can you have good hospitals, healthcare, access to them without it? They're still plowing their fields with oxen in those areas, yet basically being told you can't have a tractor to do that because that would spit out emissions, which would be bad. It's a hypocrisy that's just no good. We forget about Africa. We really do. It's a big chunk of the nation. All right, let's see what else is going on in the news out there. Well, economically, Canada's really doing poorly, to say the least. Let's see, Stellantis. That's a interesting automotive company we're hearing a lot about lately because a lot of our tax dollars keep getting put towards it. Because speaking of hypocrisy, environmentalism, net zero, all those dollars going towards Stellantis and all these different levels and all these plants that never opened. And they closed one plant, I guess, in 2024, early 2024 out east to retool it to make electric vehicles. But now that the things have changed, they said, you know what, we're just moving our operation to Illinois. So 3,000 workers in Brampton are going to be put out of work there, and it's going south of the border. We really got to start seeing Mark Carney's economic brilliance come into play at some point, aren't we? Wasn't he supposed to be the genius who was going to get us the trade deals? He's failing. He's failing brutally. He's failing on every front. Trump is pushing Canada around like the 98-pound weakling in the back of the comic books. And Carney's just sitting there taking the slaps. We saw that in Egypt when he was kind of sitting in the back row when they had to scramble over there. They had to charter a jet because Canada is so incompetent. We don't have the ability to fly a prime minister on short notice. So they had to get a private airline to do it for them so he could go to Egypt and pretend he had even a glimmer of a part to do with the peace talks that are happening in the Middle East right now and the agreements being put in. He's speaking of just failures in so many levels. Yet at the same time, see, what's being driven home is Trump doesn't care what he thinks. And some people say, well, Poilievre wouldn't do any better. I don't know. We don't know. He didn't get in. Maybe he wouldn't. But if he didn't do better with Trump, because Trump's just going to do whatever he pleases, I can live with that theory on it, then you've got to diversify the economy. You've got to find other customers. I mean, we're getting a beating on softwood lumber now too, right? So what's Carney doing? He's holding up the pipelines. He's still got the carbon cap going on, the emissions cap. He's still got the tanker ban. So we're up the creek. And it seems everybody seems to know it except Liberal voters. Here's another news story. A Crown Corporation's forecast in the Canadian economy is going to officially fall into recession this year. And they're blaming part of it on Trump's tariff policies. Export Development Canada is saying the growth rate for Canada this year is below that of the U.S. by 1.67%. It's below the average for developed economies in general. Oh, but we're ahead of Germany and France right now. It's not looking good, guys, and we're sitting on all of these resources, and we won't develop them. It's absurd. We are shooting ourselves in the feet, and it ties back into that environmentalist extremism, that lunacy, that let's make everybody poor for the sake of this emissions dream. That's what Magatte was talking about as a guest. I mean, it's causing much more damage in the Africa and other areas like that, but it's hurting us here too because these guys are insane. And we're shutting down our own economy on this dream of trying to make the temperatures change. Let's see. A little no thing, Alberta. Wise license plate with an attitude. Yes, Alberta's license plate. It's funny where slogans get pushed around for political reasons and things like that. Pardon me. I'm going to survive to the end of the show, I promise. So, Alberta's license plates, for some of you might remember, used to be called Wild Rose Country. It used to say that on them because it is our official flower. We're the Wild Rose province. But then the Wild Rose Party under Danielle Smith years ago was really making inroads, really coming up. And the Progressive Conservatives are getting pretty upset about it. They actually took Wild Rose Country off of our license plates because they didn't want it to look as if anybody was thinking positively about the Wild Rose Party. That's how petty politics can get, and how insecure the old Progressive Conservatives under Alison Redford and the others were back in those days. Either way, it sounds like Premier Smith's bringing it about. So the license plates now are going to have the words strong and free on them. Yeah. And that's Alberta's motto, Fortis y Libre. It only makes sense to have that on there. But it also is, it's a great logo. I mean, Quebec, their license plate slogan and their provincial slogan is, I remember. Strong and free Alberta works well for me, though we've got to, I think, break a little farther from the Federation to become fully free. But that's a nice move. It's funny that it's the little symbolic things sometimes that make a difference. And it'll be funny watching the lunatic left coming out in opposition to that. But they will. They'll say it's a separatist slogan. Oh, well, get over it. Speaking of Progressive Conservatives, let's see, in Newfoundland, Labrador, they won a majority government last night. For some national news. That's 10 years the Liberals were in there. So we've got a new premier. It's Tony Wakeham. I won't pretend to know a heck of a lot about him, but it is change for Newfoundland. I guess it was a real back and forth race, though, very tight. And, let's see if Newfoundland's in for some positive changes out of that. I guess time will tell. As well, let's see, Campbell River. If you know Vancouver Island, nice little town up there, fantastic salmon fishing, things like that. Also Nanaimo, Campbell River, well, pretty much everywhere in North America. The addiction epidemic is overwhelming just about everything. And we're seeing it there now with, a 30-year-old woman got stabbed to death by another woman out on the streets. They normally wouldn't report those sort of news things, but just the small towns aren't even safe anymore, guys. It's addicts on addicts, but the addicts don't just attack other addicts, they attack other people. I mean, hopefully that woman who was, again, I think I saw something, they caught her in Vancouver. She was randomly stabbing people, stabbed over 7 people. Again, another addict. So let's quit pretending they're harmless. They're very dangerous. Let's see, Peter LaFontaine saying, let's not forget we knew we needed to diversify and grow our fossil fuel agriculture, minerals, and forestry products for years. Don't forget Canadian senators approve those bad laws. Yeah, we really have a lot of resources to work with, and we just got to battle against the ideologues. And again, the senators, others, who sit in a comfy area and don't realize what's really happening out there. Let's see, next week I am not going to be in, guys. I'm popping out to Israel for a little while. I'll be back the week after. Watch my channels, though. I'm going to be posting stuff up. I'll be writing stories. They'll be coming up on the Western Standard. And as well on my X, I'll post those live at Cory B. Morgan. And I'm really looking forward to getting a look on the ground. Talk about an area where we're getting a lot of mixed news reports, a lot of torqued stuff. It's difficult to tell what's true, what's not true. Well, I'm going to have an opportunity to spend a week out there and look around and tour some very interesting spots. And hopefully be able to, broaden my own perspective on what's going on out there and be able to share that with you guys. So please keep track of that and go easy on whoever the guest host is going to be here on the Cory Morgan Show next week. I'm sure we'll have somebody fill it in for that. So let's see what else we've got. That's pretty much it. Just one more thing, I guess. The RCMP, when we're talking about exporting meth to New Zealand. Yeah, Canada's becoming a cottage industry for drug exports and so on. Nobody got charged from Canada. And there was a bizarre exchange between the chief superintendent and basically saying, well, we don't know who's responsible for that, so we're just not going to lay any charges in it. There was meth being smuggled in Canadian beer cans, and some poor young man accidentally drank it and got killed in New Zealand. And apparently Canada is incapable of sorting that problem out. And it turns out there was problems with that meth being exported from Canada earlier in the past as well. All right, guys, I'm going to give my voice a break and let you guys go. Thank you for tuning in today. Watch for the pipeline tonight. We'll break down some more stuff there, and keep on the Western Standard News to keep seeing those news updates coming as they break. We will see you all again when I get back up to the Great White North here in Alberta. Thanks.